I've been to so many ashrams and monasteries and this, and they're filled with people who think they're spiritually, on a spiritual path. They get nowhere because they're trying to avoid that which is blocking them. And so from the bottom, they're trying, it's like kindergarten going to university. No high school. No preliminary training. You have to work on what's blocking. So if you want to develop, we'll say spiritually, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, just to have contentment. There's the story of this guy. He meets an angel and he says, the angel says, come, you're a sincere seeker. I'll take you to one place. And first he takes him to a place where everyone is miserable and suffering, hell, terrible, oh, horrible. Then he takes him to a place where everyone is happy. He said, this must be heaven. And are you happy? Is this heaven? They said, no. Because happiness brings with it misery. Because when we're happy, it's because something makes us happy. But we're always scared of losing what makes us happy or becoming unhappy. So happiness is much of a prison as sadness. So you have to find contentment, freedom, contentment, okay? So we have to see when people go and meditate in ashrams and monasteries to be happy. They want to find peace. Like Dalai Lama talks about happiness. You know Dalai Lama, the Tibetan guy? Leader of Tibetan Buddhism. Always talking about happiness. But Buddha said, don't seek happiness, seek truth. So we must find truth. And so if you're just trying to find happiness with all of these things, you'll never actually be happy because it'll come and go. I've achieved, what I'm teaching you is how to become content. So whatever happy things or shitty things in life, you're still content regardless of it's hot, it's cold. I'm happy, I'm sad. I'm depressed, but I'm content. I'm happy, I'm content. So we seek for contentment. So to try and find happiness by meditating without dealing with what's in the middle. If we have the soul, the spirit, let's say, wants to find spiritual contentment, happiness, whatever it is, what's in between? The ego personality. You, the human. If you don't deal with the human, which is that which prevents the alien from finding its true self, to get back to baby no name, the central I, all these different words and concepts, to get to that freedom where everything is possible, you have to get through past the personality. So we don't work on meditating 2 hours a day or anything like that, because as long as the personality is there, it doesn't help you. Too many people in the monasteries, they're still psychological mess, emotional mess. They spend 20 years meditating and they still cry at the drop of a hat or something like that. See, so that's not enough. We have to deal with that which is preventing our happiness, which is our ego personality, which is the broken machine. Okay? And it's a broken because it thinks it knows things. It thinks you understand things. You know what you want. You know what you don't want. But all of that is lies that they put on baby no name. So we've got to get past all of that to find out who am I really, no longer have emotional mood swings, no longer fragmented, no longer buffers. Then you can find contentment, and then all of a sudden everything opens up. Everything is good in life, okay? So, well, it's 20 past, as you said, time to go. Oh, is somebody, one of the other peoples? Okay. All right, so today we're going to talk about two different parts of the machine. Each are like independent. So like a jigsaw puzzle, all the parts that I teach you come together to make the whole human being, okay? But like fragments, which live in groups, the parts also are like groups. So we have a lot of pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. We put a bunch of pieces to make a section here, a bunch of pieces make a section there, and so on, and then we put the sections together, okay? Rather than from all the pieces just build one whole. That's impossible. because it's like saying, here's all the parts, build a car. You cannot. First you have to build the engine, and then the transmission, and then the different parts. Then you put the parts together and you have a car. You know, like actually cars and many machines, or even computers, they don't actually make everything. There are companies that make parts, or like airplanes. Companies make certain parts, then the airplane maker or the computer maker or the car maker buys those parts, puts it together, and they become the maker of the finished machine. But they actually are buying parts that are made by other people. So by the same token, we've gone through a few parts of the machine. Today we're going to go through two more very important parts to the machine. So first, to recap everything you remember about the mansion, how it's such a good buffer, right? And now, so we went through events, identification, fragments, buffers, and today we're going to talk about three natures. But before we do that, are there any questions or experiences you've had thus far through the model? Yeah.
I want to share something. So I was faced with a situation where I had fragments, and I was able to recognize that every fragment has the potential to be the pilot, and I was able to pick the one that had the best outcome for me. And I want to say thank you.
Good.
Yeah, it was a situation that would have shaken me, like made me feel like maybe challenged, but I took a minute, thought about the fragments, and voila! Thank you.
Super. Great. And see, in only 1 week, and you didn't even finish the whole model.
Yes.
So imagine in 6 months how easy that'll be. All right. Okay. Did you watch the video from the second talk?
Yeah.
So you're up to date? Okay. Welcome. All right. So today we're going to talk about another, like I say, section. It's called the three natures. Now, there's only, what? What are you laughing?
Yeah.
Huh? Okay. Huh? Nothing. It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No. Okay. In all humans, we can divide everybody into one of three types of people, one of three natures. Okay? There's the intellectual nature, emotional nature, and moving, which is a physical. Okay? Now, just follow, it'll make more sense soon. All three natures, wait, here, did that work? No. How do we make this work? Mirror. Okay. Now, all right, so everybody has all three types, three natures within ourselves, but one is stronger. So the intellectual nature is the lawyer, the doctor, the analyst, the accountant, very calculating, very cold emotionally. But they can still have a family, fall in love, and play sports, and be active. But the question is, how much are you intellectual compared to the other two? So we'd say the very unhealthy type of person who is an accountant, who's at his desk all day, calculating numbers, or her, I mean, it has nothing to do with man or woman in this, always at the desk, and works, 16 hours a day, making a lot of money, running the business, helping other people run the business. Then he goes home, has his wife, his kids, has dinner together, has a little interaction, but doesn't do anything physical. But he can still walk, go for a walk, maybe do some physical things. Maybe that accountant also plays squash, like one of my accountants. Very big guy, always at the desk, has his family, but he goes to play squash also. So he has a little bit of physical, okay? So there's any combination that you could be more emotional. That's the artist, the singer, the musician, the person who gets all excited about things, doesn't think logically sometimes, just jumps from the heart, right? And the physical, this is the jock. This is the person who's almost like the hedonist. They're everything about sports, everything about the body. You know, the jock in the gym with the big muscles, and or the person who's always into health, and primarily that's their main interest. Okay? So you can see, you can understand the model. You know people like that, right? That are one of these three types. But yet you have always a percentage of the other two so you can function. All right. So there's, as you can imagine, an infinite number of possibilities of how much each part of you is divided. Now you might be, you know, very, very close. Oh, sorry. This is all showing, right? Yes. Okay. Oh, well, that didn't work. Okay. You might be very, very closely balanced, so you can't really tell what you are or what another person is. Extremely rare to find anyone this balanced, all right? But nonetheless, one will always be stronger than others, okay? So there's no set rule, and that's why everybody appears a little different, but ultimately we're only one of these three, primarily, okay? Our goal is, of course, to find out what we are and then bring us to perfect balance so that we are all three in balance, which doesn't mean I'm always looking at everything from this side or that side, but I can be 100% intellectual when I have to. 100% emotional when I have to, 100% into the sports. So if I'm playing badminton and I'm really into the sport, 100%, because I'm so balanced, then I can play the game to win. And if I score the point, I don't get, oh, angry, damn it, you know, and yell at my partner and all of this, because the emotional is kicking in. I can be very calm, play, whether I win or lose. Intellectually, I can see that, okay, my technique was wrong or something like that. Analyze it. All right? So I can really be focused on the sport. When I'm in business. It's about money. There's no, I'm sorry, you're crying, you're this or that. We have to do business because it's about business. When I'm with the family or on a date or with somebody else, then purely emotional. It doesn't matter about the money or going to play tennis. You have to be there because it's an emotional situation. So you can be perfectly suited to every situation because you're so balanced. Instead of saying, oh, my girlfriend is upset, so it's a real example, not me, but one of my students. Oh, so I have to sit with her and talk with her because she's upset, and I'm looking at the time because I have a tennis game that I've got to go play because he likes sports more than he cares. His moving center is stronger than his emotional center. So he's there with her, but his mind is on the sporting game, you see? So that's not balanced. That's too strong a physical nature, emotional, moving center. Make sense? Okay? So if we're perfectly balanced, right now I'm with my girlfriend, she's having a tough time, I forget about everything else, and I'm just with her. When you're upset about something, don't you want your guy to be fully with you? Not, or girl, or whatever, you have to be with the girl, you know. You've got to be there because she wants to feel you're there, the emotional connection, right? And if you're doing a business, you can't sit there and say, okay, I'm doing a business transaction, but ooh, she's hot and I'd like to be with her and go on a date. You can't mix, right? And actually, I used that. I was doing a business negotiation to rent a store, and the guy on the leasing side, I had a friend, She's a girl. It's stunning, stunning, gorgeous girl. Looked like a movie star. Tall, blonde, beautiful. Absolutely stunning. All right? And I said, do me a favor. Come as my assistant to the negotiations. And I got everything I wanted. I got an amazing deal. And you could see this guy. He's like looking at me and look at her. Looking at me and looking at her. Totally distracted. Okay? Because he's not balanced. But if you're balanced, you can say, we're talking about business. I'm not going to be distracted by the physical. Okay? All right, so everybody is one of three types primarily. You need to know what you are, but your goal is to become perfectly balanced. So you become what I call the fourth way, not one of three. Okay? And other than that, what we're going to learn exploring this is how to know what another person is. Now, why do you need to know what another person is primarily? You never try to change anybody else, by the way, right? Remember, our work is only about you only. You're the only one to do anything about. But you need to understand another person so you talk to them at their level, at their nature. If you're teaching yoga, right? If you can see this person is an intellectual person, primarily, the client that you're teaching, you will explain things in a term of, well, you see, this muscle's connected to that muscle, and if you stretch over here, it'll lengthen that because that will help loosen up the hip and so on. Very analytical, okay? If they're an emotional person, you say, well, you know, if you stretch, like stretching gets you to release your body and release tension so that you can feel more relaxed. See, you explain it in an emotional way. Because if you talk about, oh, you'll feel better, more relaxed to an intellectual, he's going to say, okay, I'll go find some other thing to do. You see? So if you want to get along with other people, you must be able to speak and be their primary nature as well as know what their primary nature is. In business, if I have an intellectual type person, put them running a machine, not dealing with customers who might get upset from time to time, because they won't deal with it very well, nor the moving center type, the physical person. You don't want him also dealing with customers. With customers, you want the emotional natured person, because then if a customer is upset, they can empathize and calm down the customer by having an emotional understanding of why are they so upset. Okay? So you need to know what a person's nature is so you put them in the right job, so they can do their job better. Because if you put an emotional natured person or a moving center, a physical type person running a machine that can be very technical and break down, they're just going to lose their temper. But the intellectual person will analyze what's wrong with the machine, how can I fix it, what can I do different? They stay calmer. Okay? So, that's that. Now, go back to play here. Okay. So there's the three natures. Each person has a bit of the other. We're all off balance, and we need to attain balance. So if you're a very intellectual person, if you don't understand this, then whatever you do isn't going to help. It's just bore you. But if you understand this and you can see you're extremely emotional, you can try to watch when you have emotional swings and stop yourself and try to analyze things and see, is this emotion appropriate? Is it better to just analyze what's really going on using the fragments and the buffers, seeing what's that other person feeling, not what do I feel right now? And the more you do that, you can become more balanced. Or the emotional nature person can start studying something very boring and intellectual. Study mathematics, for example. All right? Study something intellectual, just to expose your mind more to intellectual, very mathematical, very hard sort of things. Okay? Likewise, the intellectual person could spend more time learning music, maybe take an art class. And then while this intellectual person is taking a painting class, and instead of analyzing technique to be perfect do it as a more abstract exercise and say it doesn't have to fit in the lines, just let your brush flow. Okay? So doing something like that. And of course, if you're weak on the physical side, then just take up more sport. You have to do something physical every day, but not only physical things every day. So if your day is purely physical, you need some time for something emotional, something intellectual. All right? So to gain balance, find where you're off balance and try to do things of the other two natures or aspects of the nature. Okay? So basically it's, yeah, that's there, that's there. Okay. Oh, why isn't this, sorry, just change this thing back. Which picture here? Okay. So you take one person of each of the natures and you say, here's a forest. What do you think? The intellectual will say, ooh, flat land, straight trees, cut the trees down, make timber, build houses, we'll make a lot of money and build a housing development. The emotional nature will go, oh, the trees are so beautiful. Ah, the flowers and the leaves, this fresh air and the birds singing. Oh, beautiful. I don't want to touch it. I just want to sit here and meditate. And yeah. And the moving center, the physical person, will say, oh, what a great place to run and exercise. I can climb trees and jump over rocks, and what a great workout. Okay? So that's how you find out what you are and what other people are. How do you see different events, and how do you interpret it? And you ask other people what they think of it. So you can start to see a difference between how you see something and how they see something. So the more you do this with as many things as possible, which could be you go to coffee and you're sitting in the cafe with your friend, and there's another couple having a discussion or an argument, and you say to your, what do you think of what's going on? And they'll say, oh, well, he's absolutely right. He's analyzed it completely clearly. He's explaining it to her very well, and she's being unreasonable. Well, you know you're dealing with an intellectual person, right? And if they say, well, he's not feeling what she's feeling, he's not understanding, he's not listening, you're dealing with an emotional. And again, man and woman, it's irrelevant, okay? And if then if your friend says, oh, they should just go for a run or something, you know, go do a workout. And you do a good workout, go play a game of tennis, something like that, they'll be fine. See? So, what do you think of every situation? You observe yourself and see what you think. Then ask your friends what they think, and you'll start to see how we can know what a person's nature is by how they respond to situations and their opinion of other people's situations. Okay? So, that clear? Okay? It's pretty easy to understand the concept, and now you need to apply it. All right? So, each of you, we'll start with you. What do you think your nature is? Your primary nature? Huh? Emotional. Why do you think that?
Because I always, I can say my nature is emotional because I'm always detached to something, especially when I see trees are cut down to build some house without considering the space for nature or for some other birds or other creatures, just for human only. I'm always in my emotional when I see maybe in the government where things are not going well, so I feel like I need to do something on them,
Okay, so you get emotional when you see anything Well, nature, trees. Okay. How is your finances in life, the basic material things of life? Are you have enough? Are you successful? How would you rate yourself?
Right now I'm struggling. I can say hand to mouth.
Hand to mouth. Okay. So you see where the emotional is too strong and the material, intellectual aspects of life are suffering because of that. That's clear, all right? So, and you're a yoga teacher, so obviously you have some good physical aspect, okay? So you see where you need to become more intellectual about balancing your emotions so your emotions don't take you away from whatever is happening at the moment and get so emotional. Have you ever found that when you get very emotional about something, be it the trees or the forest or the government, how do other people respond to you? Do they like, okay, or, you know, or do they get involved too? Do you notice any that it changes the mood of the people you're with?
Yeah, I noticed, but the thing is, I've found some kind of maybe people community whereby I feel like they understand me when I'm talking, you know.
Okay,
So like we are vibing together.
so but you said before, yes, people did get uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah.
So you got rid of them. Now you have people who are all the same. See? So all emotional natures stick together. Now, is anybody in your group of friends financially successful, or are you all living hand to mouth?
There's some successful.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. And yet they're still emotional.
Yeah.
Okay. And they get along with and they get also upset by these things.
Yeah.
So they have more balance. Okay? But some don't. All right. So you've got to become more balanced to the intellectual side and take money more seriously so that you're not living hand to mouth, because you can't live hand to mouth forever. All right? When we get older. All right? That's what we have to think about, is that okay now, but what about my future? All right? Can you see other people? Well, you'll start to look and judge, are other people more emotional or intellectual or so on. Okay? So that's the exercise to start watching. But you can definitely see how you're more emotional. Have you ever had a time when there was a job or something that your emotions made you get angry and you lost?
Yeah, most.
Most?
Yeah.
Okay. So you see the danger of being too emotional. It's causing the material side of life to suffer. Right? So we don't want losses. Now, a rule of business is don't increase your income, cut your expenses. So in other words, stop losing money. Remember the vessel with the energy, with the fragments. The fragments are leaking energy. You've got to plug the hole so we just naturally have more. Okay? So you have to watch how the emotional outbursts or reactions are costing you on the financial side. Finances are always intellectual, of course. Okay? See the importance. Which side, what do you think you are?
Emotional.
You're emotional. Yeah. Okay. And do you see where that's ever harmed you or helped you or your interactions?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where it's harmed you, can you tell why? Like what was the other person like? Where was the conflict?
Well, I'm emotional and also an overthinker. So I end up overanalyzing. Probably overthinking things that are not even there.
So by overthinking, do you think that's intellectual? Huh?
Well, I
What do you think?
calculate the way people say we'll cross when we get the bridge is here. I am dealing with it here, so that by the time I'm getting there, I already somehow know what to do or what not to do.
Okay, but when you overthink, how does it make you feel?
Well, more of anxiety, but also I feel like I am controlling it. Like I'm taking charge of it. I'm just not waiting for
Okay.
So whether I make it or not, I already thought about it. So yeah.
But when you're overthinking, my point is that when we think we're thinking, is it really intellectual if you're more of an emotional type of person? Or are you thinking you're emotional, but you're actually very analytical and intellectual?
But maybe I'm a bit of both because I feel people's happiness, people's pain. I
Yeah.
get attached too much, and I think it has also increased because now I'm a mom, so I feel it. Even other kids, other moms' kids, I literally feel everything and feel it all, even the things I'm not supposed to. Because at times you're
Okay.
told, don't carry your baggage. It's not your baggage to carry,
Mm-hmm.
but I just feel it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's very emotional, but yet you overthink and analyze. Okay.
Yes, yes,
The
till my
point.
brain hurts.
Oh, your brain hurts. Okay. So the thing is, what you have to see is that whatever you're doing, whether it's the overfeeling or overthinking, does that result with a good end or a bad end?
Most times, I think good because I have thought through it because I believe there's no one coming to save me. So if I don't sort it out, no one will do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I push myself to do the work. And yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But what we're looking for is the times things don't work.
Yeah, that times it doesn't work.
Okay.
And I feel like, for instance, say I'm applying for a job, I've gotten an interview, I did manage to get it. Of course, I'll be devastated. I'll have my meltdowns. Oh, da, 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 da. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
But now we're getting a good example. So you didn't get the job. How was your interaction with the person interviewing you?
most okay. The way they say you feel energy, but then you feel like, yeah, this is actually working. We are on to a good start. I feel I did my best. Plus the feedback you're getting, then you don't get it, or you're ghosted.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, okay, what was that all about?
Okay. So you're confused. Why? I thought we were getting along.
Exactly.
Okay. That's kind of example I'm looking for. When you're not perfectly balanced, you will think things because you're not actually really seeing your imbalances, the other person's different nature, and that you think it's good, but you can't really connect with the other person. Okay? So those are the sort of things we're looking for, is all failures. We only look for failures. We look for problems, because if something works, it works. What we look for is where things didn't work. So think about things that didn't work, arguments, conflicts, failures, and think about how you were and the other person was. Were you talking about the same thing from the same point of view? Follow what I mean? Okay, so what do you think, yours?
I think I'm a bit of everything.
Of course, we are all everything,
Yes.
but which one are you primary? Where were your conflicts, problems?
I would say I'm more of an intellectual.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, I find myself thinking about work, 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 work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the person who sees like money. You know how you say like, where am I getting? What scares me at night every time? I'm like, I want to be comfortable. For example, giving an example with my grandma, the way she is comfortable in her 94 years. I don't want to be working at 50, say maybe even 40. You see, I want to retire. So every time I'm relaxing, I'm only thinking, what can I do to get there? What can I do to retire early? So there's that. And also I get anxiety. I also, other than I did mention in the first session, I do farming. I also do a bit of property management, but that's like a fun bit of it. So I get a lot of anxiety. Say I get a call from the caretaker saying this and this has happened. You're dealing, say, with KPLC, this and this has happened. Before I get to solving that, I get a bit stressed before I get to solving that kind of problem. But then I can say for the physical part of it, uh, maybe a bit of it. I do try to work out from time to time, especially when I'm stressed. Either every day I try to slot in like an hour of workout, either in the morning, depending on how my day is looking, in the afternoon, or if I'm in the house in the afternoon. When I feel I'm stressed, I try and do something. So there, I don't think I'm confused about it, but the emotional part depends on who I'm dealing with. I'm very emotional when it comes to people close to me. I feel very deeply. These are my siblings, obviously, family close to me. But when it comes to strangers, from the jobs I've had in the past, I know very well I don't do well with customer service. That part, I'm no good. Like, put me in the inside departments, whether it's a bank, then I will deliver projects, name reports, and all that. But dealing with people, even going to a party, I can go with a party with my friend Imelda, and I will only talk to Imelda the whole time. When interacting, when you're going to these things, you're trying to interact with other people. I don't know how to do small talks because I don't know whether we can call that overthinking. Yes, I don't know how to
Okay.
deal with that.
So what do you think your primary nature is?
Intellectual.
Okay. So you're worried, you want money because you don't want to work like your grandma because that's scary.
No, I don't want. I want to be like her, relaxed when I'm older.
Okay, you want to be like, you want to retire younger, you don't want to be stressed, right? So you don't want the stress of having to work.
Yes.
That's emotion, isn't it?
Yes.
That's fear, emotion.
Yeah.
Okay? You don't want to interact with other people at the party with small talk because you're shy, you're inhibited. I'm a little bit, I don't really want to talk to people.
Not really. It's like a nature or something. When you get to know me, we can say selectively
No, but you're saying
extroverted.
but you're at a party, you don't want to make small talk to new people.
Yeah.
So why not?
Okay, maybe they might not get it.
Sorry?
They might not. You see, the way you used to someone, there's a way you
Yeah.
can talk without talking, that person gets you.
That's right.
And
But
then they-
what does it matter if they don't get you? You're scared of them not getting you, right?
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
So a little embarrassed, a little shy. That's emotional.
I can say shy.
Right. And then you go to work out to get rid of the stress, which is an emotion.
Yes.
So do you really think you're so intellectual, or are you emotional but covering it up with intellectual things?
I guess emotional now.
You see?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the one I've been waiting for. Okay? Where this is what you have to watch for. When you think you are something, you're usually wrong. You sound pretty clear, you're very emotional like that. But we have to watch. When we're not sure, look for your reasons for doing things. I don't like small talk because it's boring. I don't like these social events where it's all small talk and this, because there's no emotional component to it. It's just shallow because people are usually there like a meat market or something. Okay? That's primarily moving center, physical. So for me, intellectually, it's boring. And emotionally, it's empty because all they care about is physical. Right? So you need to see why you like or don't like something to find what your real nature is. So you've got to keep watching yourselves. Okay? What about you?
I think a little bit of emotional and intellectual.
Yeah, like we said, we're all three.
Yeah.
But what do you think your main nature is?
Not sure, maybe you can correct me later. I think intellectual. Because I'm always a solution-oriented person. I want to forecast to solve something before it even, like, I don't want to get there. So I look for a solution before I get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A solution
Because I'm
before a problem.
emotional, because I'm emotional. So I try to, in whatever I do, for example, I just told you that I decided to quit my
So I'm very calculated. Before I made that move, I was like, I need basic needs. I'll have to cover my expenses, putting all factors on stand because I know the kind of job I would want or what I want to do by myself. I don't want pressure. And I get jobs very easily, but end up with very bad bosses, apparently. So I'm very calculated. So before I left my job, I was like, so I need to take, my bills have to be taken care of, regardless. So I look after family property, and also there's a car we had. So I was like, I'd rather give up this car for it to give me finances because either way my daily expenses have to be met. Then I'm also a yoga instructor, so I'll be getting yoga gigs at least 3 times a week, so I'm sorted. So I'm not comfortable with that yet, as much as, yeah, there's always something in my pocket. So every time I go to my yoga students, I'm like, they're telling me, oh, I have a friend who works in whatever, they want yoga, blah, blah. So you find I create a space of, you know, I don't want to be broke. So by the time this client flies out of the country, I have to get another one before he
Okay.
exits to replace that.
So
Like that.
financially calculating for the money. What would happen if you lost the job and you had no money?
Probably I will still be there, or I would have done I will be in another job because I get jobs easily, that's what I say.
Okay.
But my only fear is dealing with these bosses that I don't like.
Right. And how do you deal with somebody you don't like? Do you get very angry, very upset?
Very, very upset.
Okay.
Very, like this upset.
Okay.
Yeah.
So primarily you're saying intellectual, but your emotional is out of balance because you get upset very easily.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
So then that means you're suppressing the emotional nature so that at the slightest trigger, it can explode.
Yes, and I watch out for that because I know I have that issue. So I calculate my exits. I'm always having an exit strategy, even in relationships.
Right.
Yes.
So that
I always have an exit strategy. By the time I'm getting, I'm like, you know, by this time, if it doesn't go this way, I'll exit.
right. So is that a very good way to be when it comes to emotional situations?
No.
No. Okay. So you have an overwhelming intellectual attitude, which could be to suppress the emotions so you don't express it,
Yes.
because it's a lot stronger than you think it is.
Yes.
Okay? So you see where you have to balance and be less intellectual, more emotional, more aware of your, developing more of your emotional side. Not that it's weaker, but that you're containing it, you're suppressing it more, which means it could be that you're more of an emotional nature than intellectual, which is what a lot of people do. They're so intellectual because they're so scared of their emotions.
Yes, that's me.
And the more you're scared of your emotions, because that is your primary nature, and you're scared of being hurt or hurting someone, you suppress it by imagining you're intellectual and overthinking, and that's where it creates the imbalance. Instead of allowing yourself to be more emotional and then having more of a balance. Okay? So you think you're intellectual because of your behavior, but your behavior is just to cover up your true nature, which is more emotional, and so it just makes a mess of everything. So anytime it's an emotional situation, you feel emotional because you're intellectually challenged, like for a job or something, right? So if you get angry at your boss and you get emotional about it and you just quit, or you're angry at something this guy you're dating does, so you just quit, you break off the relationship.
Really, I give it some time and then until I feel like this is now a trend.
Yes, the question is, are you really giving it a fair chance in that time.
Yes,
That's what you think. Remember, we're broken and we don't know the truth.
I do.
Okay, remember, you're broken and you don't know that you're broken. So when you're certain of something, we can't be like Medusa with fixed opinions. Because we know we're broken machines, we have to assume that we are wrong. All right? So when trying to see your nature, what's stronger, what's weaker, you must begin with assuming what you believe is wrong. So that you can now objectively observe to see the truth.
I have a question in that. Let me give you an example. You can judge from that. Maybe I'll be able to know what category I belong to. So, for example, my very recent boss. So it happens that he hasn't paid us for like 2 months. I'm the admin. I have to keep lying to people. And then by the second month, I find out on my own that, he's just managing us. So I resign and quit. Then he later on, keep managing other people. And by the time he's closing down the company, 4 months down the line, no salaries. So I think
Okay.
I was smarter because I left 2 months before them. And I
Yeah.
wouldn't want to tell them this is what is happening because I did my own research and I knew the truth by the time I was resigning.
You use the word smart. Smart has nothing to do with intellectual or emotional. Right? Smart is that wisdom is actually in the next part of the machine, but you had the wisdom to leave.
Where do I lie?
Right. So that's what you have to observe. Your emotional, how quickly you get emotional, how you will leave and walk away from things, instead of, is there a way to make it work? I'm not saying there was or there wasn't, but we have to observe our feelings and our actions and our thoughts in how we relate to simple things. Okay?
But in that instance, I felt like I observed, I did my due diligence and got
Right.
to know the truth
Okay?
and quit without poisoning anyone.
Okay, I'm not saying you're not more intellectual. Okay? But what we want is a balance.
Okay.
And to gain balance, we have to see if we are hiding or suppressing our true nature, or if our nature is so big it hurts us in some way. I mean, wouldn't you like to have more money, more freedom instead of living hand to mouth? Because living hand to mouth is stressful. And if I'm stressed, I'll feel a lot more emotion. Now, if you're very emotional, you want more emotion because you're emotional. That's what you feed off of. Okay? So you're creating a difficult life financially because you're so emotional, you want more emotion, more stress, more self-pity, more, oh, I'm really so emotional, I care about these things, and it's normal people who care so much about the environment don't have money. So it's an emotional thing, right? So we have to be careful not overfeeding. So if you want to be more intellectual, or you want to be, well, the thing is, if you are more emotional than you want to admit, because you want to be intellectual. Okay, when you were very young, were you very emotional when you were young? More emotional? Okay, that's something else we can think of. When you're very young, you're very emotional. Your father says, you can't be that emotional, you'll never succeed in life. So your nature is emotional, but then you suppress it by being more analytical, more intellectual. You see? Remember, our goal is to attain that contentment within ourselves, balance. So balance is finding out wherever we are imbalanced, right? There's no right or wrong in your nature. There's no this is better than that. No, it's just to discover where you are too much of one thing or hiding buffers, making you believe one thing so you can continue with the way your life is going or whatever it may be, okay? We're just looking to discover the truth, and in that process, attaining greater balance so that when we're in a bad boss or a bad relationship or an argument, we'll be able to know what's the right way to deal with it. The typical example, and men and women, it's just always depicted that way, but it could be either way. It's a couple, and the woman come home from work, and she says, my boss was terrible, and he gave me so much trouble, and he's making me feel miserable. And the man, being intellectual, says, okay, we're going to sue the company, we're going to sue him, we're going to get you big compensation, and we're going to fight. And she's like, no, 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 I just... And all she wants, being emotional, is to express her feelings. But he, being intellectual, analyzes the situation and says, this is the action we'll take. So they fight. But if you're more balanced as a man and she's complaining like that, then instead of intellectually giving what we'll do, say, oh, I know how you feel. Because that's all the emotional person wants. I know how you feel. Yeah. You don't give solutions. You just empathize. But if he comes home and says, oh, my boss is an asshole, and he lied to me about this, and he put me in trouble, and he's threatening to cut out my bonus, and she says, oh, honey, just know how he feels, and just have compassion and feel love for him, he's going to say, what a stupid thing that is, right? She needs to say, okay, what can we do? Let's analyze your contract and his contract, or whatever it is, right? We need to know what another person is and talk to them at their way of understanding, by having a balance within ourselves, which is done by observing, are you always responding according to the situation? Right? So what I'm asking you now to analyze what do you think your nature is, it's to show you that, you know, we get examples where, well, I might not know myself very well. So if you're in an intellectual situation and you respond emotionally, you're not balanced. If, you know, by just quitting or walking away. Sometimes that's wisdom, yes, but is it always the right thing to do? Look for the times it was wrong, okay? So look for times when your response was inappropriate and caused more trouble than it was right, than it should have, okay? So that's something to look for. And, oh, I'm sorry, we didn't ask you yours yet.
I think primarily emotional. I work out thrice a week consistently for the last 3 years, but it's not it's because of the fear of ill health. So I'm trying to ensure that I'm healthy. I also look for money out of the fear of poverty. So I would say basically like emotionally driven. Yeah.
Okay. Fear, want good health. I don't want to be sick. I don't want to have enough money. All right. So you know that. Now, how are the other sides going? Is your body in good health? Perfect. Well, you're still young. I hope so. Yeah.
And also maybe the markers that I'm looking for are
Yeah.
the correct markers.
All right. And how about financially? Is that okay?
Better.
Okay. Do you see any times when you were being emotional and that caused a problem with conflicts of a job or a customer or something?
Yes.
Okay.
Like my last job, I lost that job because I was emotional.
Okay. All right. So you know you need to get some balance. Now, when you lose your job or have an argument, can you think what the problem was? Did you really understand the other person from their point of view? Could that have been the reason? Like if the guy's not paying and you analyze it, oh, this is going bankrupt, I better leave now. That's good, that's wisdom. But if you had an argument with somebody, can you see why, where was the difference of opinion? Okay, that's what we need to look for. Is when there is any form of conflict, and you look at it in yourself, remember the difference between a monologue and a dialogue. Monologue, one person talking to himself. A dialogue, two people talking to themselves. That's because of the different nature. If the intellectual is trying to explain to the emotional person, if I'm telling you, you're an emotional person about the trees in the forest, come on, we got to cut it down. People need houses. Then we'll make money and we can use that money to do some kind of charity work. We got to cut down the trees and flatten the forest and build houses. Will you agree? As an emotional nature? You'll always find, no, we can't do that. We've got to keep the forest. And you'll defend and we'll argue forever. Correct?
Yeah.
You can be emotional, you can be emotional and not 100% clear, because also somewhat you are interested in whatever financial gain is coming from that.
That's right.
Emotional.
Because remember, there's always, you could be very closely balanced. But we're talking about problems now. We want to eliminate conflicts and problems. So we need to understand the principle, and then we just adapt every person, every situation. But first we have to take extremes to understand the concept so that we can fix ourselves and gain perfect balance. Okay? Now, I'm trying to convince the emotional nature that we're better to cut the trees and build houses. All right. And then we're having that argument. So I have to know, okay, I've got to convince this emotional natured person that this is a good project. Now I know that person being emotional cares about the animals and the trees. So how can I convince them this will work? Say, but if we do that, we'll make profit. And with that profit, we can replant trees in another area. We can buy some hilly land that isn't good for houses and protect that land. We can make profit here, buy that land because it's not as expensive, and make it a reserve so no one can ever touch it. And in this project, we will put little garden paths, and we'll put trees, and we'll make a little, like a path that nobody can walk on so animals can still travel through this area, right? So then you can start to understand where the person is coming from and say, and we'll design the houses in a way that's aesthetically pleasing, that fits with nature. Okay? So instead of just saying, oh, come on, it's good land, let's cut the trees and make houses. Can't you see this is the right thing to do? You can explain it in an emotional way so the other person will understand and could get them on your side. Now that's just an extreme example to give you the concept, all right? So, on the other hand, the emotional natured person, the power is going on, and as you know, Nairobi power is not very stable. Okay. Doesn't want to work today. Okay, there you go. So, on the other hand, the emotional natured person can explain to the intellectual, if everybody cuts down all the trees, where do we get air to breathe? Where do we get the environment? So now I want to just build houses, okay? And you're an emotional natured person. You say, yes, but housing development that's just concrete, houses and streets, has less value than less houses, but with some green space, because that's a better place for families to have children. So it's more valuable property. So instead of 100 houses, if we build 70 houses, but leave some trees and green spaces, you can make more profit because they'll be more valuable. Oh, more profit. Okay, I like that idea. And all of a sudden, the design changes from nothing but houses to having some green spaces and leaving some trees there. Because the emotional nature sees it from the intellectual's point of view and goes to, where's the intellectual aspect, which is making money? And here I can make more money by leaving some of the emotional feeling of the nature in the project. You see? And you can only do it if you're able to think from their point of view, instead of saying, we need to keep the trees, to, money, where can it be a balance? Because all he cares about is money, right? So now, every argument you listen to with other people, you see where is their disconnect and how would you approach it differently from either side. And then, of course, your own conflicts, your own emotional outbursts, your own overthinking. If I overthink and intellectualize, would I step on somebody's emotions on the way? Right? Would anybody get hurt? Can I do it in a different way when I'm thinking compassionately about the other people that might be hurt? Right? Or can I not be that worried and relax a bit and see it from how would it be from an emotional point of view? How would this person be affected? What would be the outcome there? And I might get better ideas of how to solve a problem. But if I'm just thinking intellectually, would that give the best result? Right? Or if I overthink too much, do I neglect my family because I'm too busy focused on this problem? Right? Have you ever been so overthinking that your kid or someone is talking to you and you didn't actually hear what they said? Never happened?
It happens a lot, and you also end up talking to yourself most times, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
You see? So all of these things are not good. Excess in any way is not good. So the only good and bad about the natures is excess or balance. Okay? So start watching for that and seeing what you really are and where you're inappropriately thinking, behaving, reacting, and think, what is this other person's point of view? Or what is the problem's point of view? Okay? I'll give you an example. I don't know if it'll make sense or not. I had some stores, they were photo processing laboratories. Okay, so it's a big machine. You're printing the pictures, then the pictures get processed, developed, and printed. Okay. So this is a chemical-based machine, so there's chemicals, washes, and the last section, the paper goes in rolls up and down each rack, and the last section is the dryer. Okay. So in the winter in Montreal, the machine would always start to break. The paper would curl and get jammed as it was going in the dryer. And then, problem, we have to fix it, okay? So we looked at the machine, took apart the machine. I tried for weeks and weeks and weeks to fix what was broken in the machine. Nothing was ever wrong with the machine. But because of the climate change between summer and winter, which is about an 80-degree difference, so you have plus 40 to minus 40 between summer and winter, the humidity also changed. So the solution was lowering the temperature of the dryer. There was nothing mechanically wrong. It was the humidity in the air that was causing the paper to dry too much, so I had to lower the temperature of the dryer, and then it worked perfectly. So my point being, you had a mechanical problem where the solution had nothing to do with the mechanics, but the humidity of the air in the whole city. Right? So anytime there's a problem, if you keep focusing on what you think the problem is, then you will have a problem. But if you understand that where the first place to look is, aside from identification and fragments, but when it's two people or any situation, am I looking at it from one nature, but the other side is a totally different nature? And we're just looking at it from two totally different points of view. Even if it's in your own head. Is the problem something that needs an emotional response, and I'm overthinking, analyzing it? Okay? Does that make sense? Okay? So we start analyzing that way, and you will start to get more balance and solve problems much easier, because you'll see it from their point of view, not your point of view. Knowing now that you're probably looking at it from one of three different natures. Right? So as you're thinking intellectual, as we see, it's all based on emotions, right? So the same with your overthinking. You think you're thinking, but what is it really? Would it better to be just give someone a hug? You know, sometimes, like I had one employee, I came into the shop, you know, I had 8 businesses, so I would make my rounds. And there was one time I came in one of my shops and she was being very nasty and she wasn't in a good mood. And she wasn't doing her job properly. So I'm a businessman, I own the shop, my manager isn't behaving properly. What do? I said, come on, you have to do your job, right? I mean, that's what you would typically do. And so what happened, I said, get in my office in the back room. And we went in there, and I just hugged her. I just hugged her. I didn't say a word. And she started crying and said, oh, how you always know the right thing to do. My boyfriend just broke up with me, and blah, 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 blah. You see? So she wasn't just screwing up with her work. It was an emotional moment, emotional problem. And instead of dealing with an apparent intellectual situation in an intellectual way, being a boss of a company and a manager, I dealt with it emotionally. And that solved the problem. Okay? That's where we want to go with understanding the natures. Is that it's not what I think it is all the time, sometimes yes, but what is really the problem? And the problem is often not the problem at all, but the problem appears, which is she's not doing a good job, because of an emotional situation. And if I just gave her shit, she would do a worse job. Right? So the problem is we're not seeing the real problem. Whether it needs to be analyzed intellectually or felt with emotionally. Or I had one employee, this guy was great. He was a lovely fellow. He was such an easygoing, happy guy. Very friendly, very nice, very smart, great with customers, good with the machines, was great. But every day, 11:30 at morning, he would start to get very nasty. He would just like, and I figured it out. Hypoglycemia. The guy's blood sugar would drop by 11 o'clock. And so it's purely physical. If I give him shit and say, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why don't you behave better, right? Or if I gave him a hug, none of it would have worked. What I had to do was take lunch. It's time for lunch break. Go get a sandwich. And that cured the problem. You see? So it's not just intellectual and emotional. Sometimes it is purely physical. But other people would say, boy, he's very emotional. He loses temper so easily. So I could be intellectual and say, I have an employee who loses his temper, gets angry at customers, get rid of him. And I'd lose a very good employee because he was really good. But I could see, okay, it's a physical issue. So whenever he's there, as quick as possible, take your lunch break. Doesn't matter what time it is. Or take a coffee break in the afternoon, right? 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. Go have a coffee. Take 15 minutes. Have a chocolate bar. And so instead of losing, the hardest part of business is good people to work for you. And he was good. So instead of losing a really good employee, I could see it at what is the real problem. It's not his emotions. So it's not emotional, intellectual. It's purely physical. Here's a chocolate bar. Sit down. Solve the problem. And he was great for years. You see? So you see why it's so important not to be seeing things from your point of view, because you will screw things up that could otherwise be very good if you find the right solution. Okay? I think that's the best example to show you about how it could be physical. All right? Okay. So any questions about that so far?
So do we attract the same people? Like, if you're very emotional, you attract an emotional person?
I don't believe we attract. No, I don't think we attract. You can say you attract because you behave in a certain way and then say, oh, they're that kind. You remember like the one who said, the last 10 guys are all scared of commitment. Well, I don't think you're, and she's saying, why do I attract guys that are all scared of commitment? As well, if you have 10 guys in a row that are scared of commitment, I don't think you're attracting that. It's your behavior that makes them behave that way. So if you always have the same type of problems and say, I keep attracting that kind of person, you have to look at it's your imbalance that makes people respond that way. Okay? We never say it's somebody else's fault. whatever they are. It's always my fault because I am fragmented, buffers to make excuses, or not relating to them at their level. Okay? You know, I always say, I do not want a huge flock of sheep who just follow me like all these students going, ooh, guru, guru. No, I would rather a small group of lions. My work is to train you to be a leader, to be the master of your world. And if you want to be a leader, you have to adapt to those below you or other, because there's only so many leaders. Okay? So when you say, why do I attract this kind of person? The right answer is, why do I make people behave that way? Rather than I'm attracting that kind of person. Do you see the difference? Okay, do you want to rephrase your question?
Even in terms of just friendships.
Yeah?
Because I'm trying to think, the way you're saying, there's the emotional person and there's the intellectual. Okay, we all have those aspects, but of course there's one that is. So by the time the intellect comes down to the emotional, to be able to understand you emotionally, I bet it takes some time. And for it to take that time, so this other person feels that you're not getting me, you're not understanding me. So does that mean I, the emotional person, since you're not getting to my level, I have to go to your level?
Well, the person with the knowledge, meaning now you, always have to go to everybody else's level. And you should be able to do it instantly. Like I said, I saw her behavior. I just said in the back room, because you can't hug her in the middle of a store. In the back room, gave her a hug right away. Not a word said. Instant. Okay? So when you're balanced, you will instantly know what the other person is like and relate to them at their level. It is your job. That's why people don't want to be leaders. That's why they quit the course. Because you get a responsibility that you're now the one who has to adapt to everybody else. This is something, when I did the parenting course, I did a course on being a better parent specifically designed for Singaporean Chinese who have very intelligent children, okay? And the problem was their kids don't obey them. This is for little kids, like 3, 4, 5-year-olds. And their problem, the parents' problem, my kid doesn't obey me. They don't listen and do what I tell them to do. I said, well, what happens? Well, I tell my child this and this and this, and I say, do you understand? They go, yes, I understand, and then they don't do it. And I said, well, that's because you think a 4-year-old can understand you at your level of explaining things. I said, when you understand that you as the parent, when you understand as the parent that your child may say they understand because they're scared of saying no, but they don't understand, you don't accept when they say, I understand, you go, okay, I know they think they do, but they can't because they're too young. So don't expect them to understand what I said, or explain it differently, carefully, and if they don't do what I said, don't get angry that they disobeyed, but know that, well, they didn't really understand, so it's my fault. I didn't explain it well. And that is the obligation of somebody with knowledge. A true leader always knows it's my fault, or a lion. Okay, you don't have to lead and be a company, but you must be master of your life. That's the only person you really should master, is your life. Okay? So that's what the work is about. And most people don't want that responsibility. They'd much rather be able to use the buffers and excuses and say, oh, it's the boss's fault, this is fault, that's fault, everybody else's fault. When, you know, the government in Quebec is a horrible government. I hated it. They made English illegal. It was illegal to speak my own language or to put up anything in public view with a word of English on it. So what am I going to do? Become a revolutionary? Well, they were revolutionaries. They were terrorists and bombings and horrible things to get their independence or their government. And so what can I do? Be a revolutionary and start a war? No, I left. I don't like it. I'm leaving. I moved to another country. Okay? So what you have to master your life, which is that I take responsibility. I'm not here to change anybody else. If I don't want to adapt, I can leave. But if I don't want to leave, I must learn to adapt. Okay? So we don't fight, we adapt. That's why there's one particular race that's known to be the people with all the money, controlling all the world and all of that, because they don't stand up and become presidents and they're very quiet. Always the advisors, the quiet ones, right? A lawyer is the advisor of the client. An accountant is the advisor of the client. The doctor is the advisor of the patient, really. But it's the client, the patient, who has to choose their way of living, right? So we need to be quietly advising to be master of our life. Only your life that matters, okay? So, did that anywhere close to answering what you were trying to ask? Okay? So, see, adapt, and there. All right? So what else? Other questions about that?
I just wanted to add on maybe what she was trying to say. Because I think when she says that, maybe attracting friends, or whether the girl who say that she attracts non-committal men, I think in everyone has their situations that are tough for them, may it be a job, others are relationships, others may be friends, others, it could be anything. So I think when she pointed out friends, I also in my mind pointed out something else that bothers me, and it's been like a trend for me.
Yeah.
And that's why I think most of us are here, because you have a weak area in your life that you identify with, and you keep, it keeps happening
Yep.
every time, and you're thinking, why do I keep finding myself in this kind of mess?
Because it's more comfortable. If you're an emotional nature, it's more comfortable to have emotional natured friends. So we seek comfort and ease.
It could be you don't want, it's not deliberate. You just find yourself in that situation.
Look, if you're, depending on the situation, but if it's who your friends are, you chose, right? So we go to where we're comfortable. So you get the same kind of people. Sometimes we're more comfortable in pain and misery than we are in happiness. A friend of mine said it. He said, he's like a teacher. And he said, some people love their misery so much, I don't have the heart to take it away from them. That's right.
Okay. Apparently I'm those people. Not that I enjoy being in pain, but sometimes I feel like it is the most time I feel more alive, because I can now express my emotions. Because I hear people say when you're sad, play good music to change your mood. For me, I play the sad music. Yeah.
Okay. So it gives you a way to express your emotions. Now, that's like stress. People love stress because it gives you the adrenaline rush. It makes you feel alive. Okay.
Because at times when I catch myself being happy, and I'm like, so what? It's going to end anytime. So what am I doing wrong? Why am I happy?
Why am I
It's not
happy?
Normal.
To be happy.
Okay, not to be happy.
You're not the only one.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, you get, things are so good. I had one fellow call me up, he's in a panic. I've got a gorgeous girlfriend, business is booming, I'm in great shape. He's listening to this perfect life. I said, so what's the panic? I'm scared it's going to end.
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
you're scared it's going to end. That's explained in one very simple word. Stupid. Isn't it, right? So why are we so stupid? And that's because the imbalance. That's because of the imbalance. So these things get fixed when we get more balance. All right? So we attract a certain kind of friends because it's more comfortable. Now, sometimes stress is more comfortable than happiness. because we like the energy, the challenge, the excitement, the thrill of the stress. Why do people do bungee jumping or whatever, right? What's the thrill of jumping out of an airplane? Sounds like a stupid idea, but it's such a thrill. Okay? Now, if you don't jump out of planes and parachute and bungee jump and all of this, and your life is nice and mediocre, everything is pretty calm, and I've got enough money to live, I've got a stable job, I've got friends I talk to, I can go out once a week, whatever it is, I've got a simple home, but I can pay the rent. You bored to death. So you need trouble, because then you get a challenge. And so we look for, where can I make trouble? All of it subconsciously, right? Because one fragment is very happy and another fragment says, I'm bored. What can I do? And so I pick a fight, and then a buffer will come in to say, he started. You see? And life is okay. Oh, they're cutting down a tree. Oh my God, that's terrible. So I get excited. Or the politician did that. I get excited. Right? But do you know what ultimately what the politicians do or whatever happens? It's going to happen anyway. But we'll find something to get excited, to make a fight. All right? So that's where you have to see what the buffers are doing. The fragments want excitement. So there we look for friends of a different nature so that we have an argument. So there's some challenge. Or we look for friends of a similar nature so we can be having a rest. We all see the same thing. And then what happens when you get a whole bunch of emotional friends together, we can all get upset about the politician together. Right? Because now I have the best buffer. My buffer is they're all upset also, therefore I am right to be upset. Because they're all upset. You see? So you see how we create our own misery. Right? That's long. Okay. So now, any other? We'll just finish this one. Any other question about it?
What do you think about me saying like reacting towards something like maybe emotional? For example, I may react to something which I may later regret of doing it.
Yeah, because
And, at that moment of regression, I think I become more intellectual. Like, why did I do, you know?
yeah. So you have to be more intellectual before you do what you regret. Right? If you were more intellectual at the time, because you would say, so you did something you regret. So you were very emotional and you got someone angry because you didn't see it from their point of view. So the more you're watching this, the more you're feeling, I want to fight. As soon, and the key is, or the trigger is, as soon as I am angry. If I have any conflict, disagreement, anger, as soon as I feel it, I've got to stop and say, okay, what is it? Is it an identification, or is it we're just seeing it from a different nature? And that's something that comes quicker the more you do it. All right? And so basically, the more you practice, the more you see, the more you have balance, the more you will be able to catch your emotion rising even before it shows on your face and change your response. Okay? So that's why I say you've got to give this 6 months or so of practicing before it's all very automatic. Okay? It takes quite a bit of time. All right? So, other question about this? All right? Basically, to sum it up, there's a mansion, and the cook is repairing the cars, the gardener is cleaning the bed and the rooms, the butler is trying to grow food in the garden. So what it is when you have the wrong nature in the wrong situation. It's like putting the wrong person doing the wrong job, and nothing gets done right. So we've got to get the right job, the right person for the right job, meaning the right nature for the right situation. And the situation isn't just the situation, but the nature of the other people involved in the situation. There's a story, a man asks the Buddha, he said, does the dog have a Buddha nature? And Buddha said, yes. And a little later, somebody else asked the same question, and Buddha said, no. So the student said, but Buddha, when you said yes, when you said no, it was the same question. What's the right answer? He said, well, the real question that one was asking, the answer was yes. And what the other one really was asking, the answer was no. So we need to respond to the situation and the people, because we are the master of our life and we are leader of our life, which means we want our life to be balanced and harmonious throughout. So we need to adapt so that the children, the customer, the employee, the friends, everyone gets what they want because they don't know. Okay? So that's your choice now. If you want to be master of your life, are you willing to adapt rather than demand they adapt to you or stick with your way of seeing it? All right? Okay.